to have an assistant from the Otters community up here with us today. If any of you have any questions about VR, we're going to direct you to Fuma, who knows quite a bit about VR. So Fuma will be able to help you out for sure. All right, and here's me. So I have been following furry artists since 2006. But I didn't formally join the fandom until 2020. I love art, museums, amusement parks, and I took every production and design class I possibly could in high school. I had attended Ringling College of Art and Design, studying game art and design for 2.5 years, and then of course life happened. Maybe to turn down the mic just a little bit. But yeah, I actually, this is something a little lesser known about me, I did make interactive exhibits for Marine Laboratories and Aquarium. And I also learned from professional printers with a home print shop. So here is the game I created for Marine. It is a manatee quiz game with real big arcade buttons, and it runs at 4K, 60 frames on a nice big 65-inch LG OLED TV. The music is wonderful, but they had to turn it off because the music was more interesting apparently than the real manatees that were right behind the exhibit. So yeah, that happened. This is what the game looks like when you play it. They originally just asked for a quiz game for manatees. And I gave them this. It was a journey, it was wonderful. I learned all throughout college Unreal Engine UDK, which was an offshoot of Unreal Engine 3. And then I self-taught Unreal Engine 4, and I was very active on forums back then. I also know Prince, and I've had a booth set up at Megaplex, I think it's the last year, in the artist alley. And I learned from some professional printers, different materials, and that actually did influence the project.
Reflex blue for the win.
I'm sorry?
Reflex blue for the win.
Something reflex blue?
Reflex blue for the win.
You're going to have to project as loudly as possible.
No, I was being facetious. I was making a print shop comment.
Yes, I'm sorry, I have hearing aids. I can't quite hear very well. So if you are going to speak, pretend you need to go through the wall to the next room, and I might hear it. So the main inspiration for the museum was actually a trip with my cousins to the Museum of Modern Art in New York. I visited them and I said, you know what, I'd really like to go and see a really nice art museum. I'd like to get some inspiration for my art. I do furry stuff, but we have galleries in Sarasota and I'd already seen them. I wanted to branch out and see more. And there was a few anthro and animal art in the museum. That's all of them. That's all. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wonderful paintings all over this museum, but there really wasn't that much animal art. There's only one that could be considered anthro, and I'm not entirely sure if that's a good representation of the furry fandom. It might be. I don't know, but it was very clear that a voice was missing, with our voice. So I wanted to make a museum that was just our voice. A museum showing furry art, created by furries, with art that furries love. So I had a few goals. I wanted to make a real museum in VR chat. I didn't want it to be a silly little project where I just throw my friends' pictures up on a wall. I wanted the entire experience to feel like you had just entered a real museum and you're learning real things about the artist and the art within it. I wanted to educate and I wanted to inspire. There's a whole range of contemporary art, history that furries love, and a real genuine portrayal of the fandom to a general audience. I also wanted to be positive. a welcoming space and a very nice social atmosphere. I want it to be fun and enjoyable, and I want it to be a world that people would come in and really love and remember. And something that they would want to show all their friends in whenever they come into VR chat. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard, your world is in the top 10 for me. When someone new comes into VR chat, I take them here. So the outreach had been incredible. But of course, my training had been in Unreal Engine. And so I had to relearn everything about how Unity works. I had some help from Myro P, who's dancing around back there. And work began on the museum in October 2023, which is around the time that this photo was taken. This is the very first screenshot of the museum actually ever.
Yeah,
2022. 2022. October has not happened yet. Okay.
In the future, it will.
I promise the rest of the numbers will be better, I hope.
That's a virtual reality world date.
So, my friends got tired of seeing blank walls the whole time. I was showing people coming in over and over and over again, white walls. Well, I just tried to figure out how lighting works and make the space feel nice and comfortable. So they insisted I put my art in there, and I just threw up some art in there. Yes, I vomited some art in the museum. And it was intended to be removed and replaced with other artists. The very first people I contacted were people that I had favorited their art on DeviantArt. So this is Jack Chicken Gravy, and his piece, I think Music to Drive You Bananas is the name of this. And it's the very first piece that was selected for the museum. And then I got, one of my friends sent me one of their friends who was an artist, Jermanko, and he has contributed 3 pieces, all in different galleries to the museum. Initially, I had trouble getting artists to sign on and agree. There was I don't know how to explain it, but I wasn't getting a lot of feedback. I wasn't getting a lot of bites. I would ask people to contribute, and I'd really like to have your art in the museum. A lot of people didn't even really understand what VR was. Even people who've contributed to this day still have no idea what VR is. But I was able to get Jermango. He was in VR, he saw his works, and that's always nice to have an artist in the museum to see their works. And then Shout Milo, I actually met at Megaplex a couple of years ago. He's the guy, if you haven't known, who was on Anthony Padilla's video about furries. And so it was really cool to have an artist, a relatively popular artist with more than 40,000 followers on Twitter, or Instagram actually, contribute to the museum. So after that, I stopped being afraid. And I started asking people that I didn't think I would get. One of the very first artists that I really fell in love with in the museum, or in the furry fandom, was Alphonse Lavallee. He's a French artist who draws paws, and I like paws, if you don't know that about me. Now you do. And I actually made a little teaser trailer with this. Unfortunately, I don't have the trailer hooked up to show you, but it only gets better from here. I also was able to secure Hearthfox, who's a Therian and who is now made famous after the Wiggle Fox guy at Anthrocon. Yeah. He wasn't the Wiggle Fox guy when I first met him, or talked with him rather. He only had 12,000 followers on Twitter. And following the Wiggle Fox fiasco, he had more than 41,000. But he was in the museum months before any of that happened. Hearthfox is, there's really not a lot of spaces in the museum, and I try to diversify as much as I possibly can. Hearthfox is basically our resident Therian, and he's also a guest of honor. And then this one's a little interesting. I asked Fan Shuhai, the guy who made all of those headshots that were frequently stolen, and he accepted to be in the museum. And then I also asked a nice descending dog if I could do a little biography on him, and he sent me a bio several pages long, which I had to pare down for the museum. And then I actually, if you go in right now, there's tons of pictures of him performing live on stage. Really, really, really fantastic guy, and great guy to work with. I actually included all of Fan Shuhai's headshots, and those 3 spots at the top, he hadn't completed yet. So while the museum was being built, he made a few more, and now all those spots are filled. 100 headshots. After that, I became absolutely fearless. You all may remember this one, Panda Paco, who was guest of honor at Megaplex, I believe 2018. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me and they absolutely love his display and they love his art. Something else for you guys to know, when I get an artist in the museum, I don't just look at the things that they've done recently. I try to look through their entire gallery. Paco has a gallery stretching back to 2007 with more than 3,000 pieces in it. He was also one of the nicest people to work with. I was afraid, I thought he was too popular, I wouldn't be able to get a hold of him. This is actually something I learned from Silas. You can just do things. You can just ask people and do things. That blew my mind. The biggest question that I get from everyone who attends the museum, did you get permission from the artist to put their works in here? And the answer is absolutely, with a resounding yes. Every single artist in the museum that is represented, that has their name, was required to give me their permission. If they did not, then their works would be excluded. There's only 2 exceptions to this rule. One is an icon representing TJ in the Birds of Color display. That person has left the fandom, and he made the icon for him to use as an avatar. So I talked with him, I said, you know, this was your avatar for so many years. This represents you. I think it's okay for it to represent you in the museum. And then the other instance, it was a circle GIF animation by Furtek, and he said, general rule is with entire gallery, you can use anything as long as you attribute. So I sent him a message, let him know, and he got the attribution. Here's some more examples of things that I've shown and sent off to artists, and responses that came back. So yes, every single artist with a plaque in the museum has accepted being there. I did ask a couple people in the history display myself, and Silas actually received permission from all those people to have those works displayed in his collection. So that collection was generously donated by Chanka Husky and Silas. Now, that includes some rather famous artists. This guy is an official Disney fine artist, which means he's one of the few lucky people who's able to draw a Disney character as fine art and then sell it. He's required to follow all the guidelines in order to stay within the style rules for what Mickey and Minnie are supposed to look like, as well as Goofy and Pluto and the gang. And he's also a Grammy Award winner from 1980 for an album cover, Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. He was attending, I don't know if DB Jake is here. DB, are you?
I'm down here in front.
Right there. DB was there when we actually were walking by, and it turned out, oh my God, Jim Warren is here. And he's like, who? Well, I saw Jim Warren's art, and that's actually what inspired me to make some of mine. And it inspired me to get back into drawing again. So he's not a furry. He has no idea what VR is. But I asked him if I could put that piece in the museum, and he accepted and he said yes. I actually took the photo myself. It's UV reactive with the black light. So in the museum, it's kind of interesting. It flips back and forth. And the size in the museum is actually the real, actual size of this canvas. So even with all that, though, there was something missing. Richard Corey saw all the wonderful contemporary art in the museum, and his response to all the hard work and effort to making the most wonderful contemporary art museum, you need history. Oh, I know the guy who's involved with the history, and there's so much history in the fandom, it goes back 50 years, you need to get the guy with history, and I know him, you need to get him in here. Now, I didn't say it at the time, but I knew if I was going to get the history, I don't know the history of the fandom. That's a lot of stuff to research, that's a lot of stuff to go through. I was alive at a certain time, I was not alive before that time. I don't know what happened before that. Imagine the biggest school paper of your life, but now it's in a museum and people are reading it, and everyone has an opinion on it, and everyone thinks they know the real story. To set the record straight would have been so much work, and I tried to brush it off as much as I can. But then I had another friend come in with a cute little otter named Lima Bean. And he said, "Oh, this looks so nice. I like everything that you did here, but you don't have any of the old art in here. It would just be really nice if you got the old art in here." So he was sending me to Chenka Husky, and I was like, no, I really don't. And then Chenka Husky came to the museum. "Oh, everything looks great. This looks so amazing. I love it. This looks great. You need to have old art in here." Keep in mind, I had already spent about 2 months working on this thing, more than my full-time job. It was a lot of work, and the museum was already pretty much finished. But then Chenka Husky directed me to Silas Sable, Mark Merlino, the guy. And he said, "Wow, this museum looks great, but you're missing a lot of the old art." And I was sitting there, the museum is almost finished. I want to release it, it's done. I want to move on. But he's saying you cannot move on and exclude all the old art. And for half an hour, I had the guy who made the first anime fan club in America, the guy who co-directed the first furry convention, Conference 0 through 10, the guy who basically started from its roots with just a few people in sci-fi convention room parties and built the fandom from basically nothing, begging me to put old art and history in the museum. And then something flipped in my mind. Who am I to say no? So there was a spot, this is Ferret Studios, you can actually see their art in the dealer's den. Some of you might have already, if you've been to the dealer's den, you've seen these pieces there for sale. That piece took up a wall space meant for 3 artists. It is ginormous. And if you see this little guy over here, that's an art that Chenka had scanned in. So many Xerox copies of APA fanzines, convention books, different like CFO documents and letters, and all of that stuff you can view online at conference. I think conferencearchive.org or conference.org.
It's conference.com, and it takes you right to the archive.
So, seeing all that stuff and getting the actual resolution and size of these documents, I had a way to do it now. Channel packing all of those into red, green, blue, and alpha, I was able to get 4 pieces of art rather than 1 in the same storage space. The final display has a projector that you can actually zoom in and see all these pieces, and special shaders are used so you can actually get nice, clean, sharp edges to all the text. Some of the details on this piece, and I think I'll go over that in a little bit, there are dots less than a pixel. And the shader is able to bring those details out. You can see the stippled dot patterns. Chenka himself said, no, I don't think those dots exist on a real thing. I said, go back and look. So he took a magnifying glass, went back to his documents and said, oh my God. If you go online and zoom into these pictures, you'll see weird pixels. But in the museum, you can actually see the documents a lot closer to the quality you would see if those documents were in real life. And with virtually all of these documents, the actual size that they were originally made, if you come into this exhibit matching your eye height to your actual eye height in the real world, it actually feels like you're holding them with the proper size and everything. This image was taken when the museum first opened. That is me on the very left. Back when I was using the blue Durgadal, Silas Sable is the green Silas Martin character over there. And then his partner, Rod O'Reilly, the other co-director of Conference, was Vincent Mink. And he's also, he's not a weasel, is he? He's a mink. Can you wear him? Okay. So yes, and Chenka, of course, who scanned all the documents himself, those three wonderful people helped give so much history to fandom. I could go on and on about this, but we do have to move on. There's so much more to cover. Myro and Nestor were the two fellows who helped program the projector so that anyone who zooms it in will proceed over the network and it will appear nice and clear and cleanly.
Question.
So how many people actually make worlds in VR chat? One person. One person. Okay, how many people really love technical CG conversations? Okay, I will try to keep it quick then. Are we recording the event so that people can actually see this?
Doing my best.
Okay. All right, your best is putting it over there. Let's hope it works.
You guys are centered in. You guys are centered more or less in the screen. There is a gap where he changed the batteries, but it's rolling now. So.
Okay, well, I will go through this pretty quickly but there's some pretty cool stuff in here. So I wanted the museum to basically be like a real museum with a very high degree of verisimilitude. You come in, you're not worried about technical issues, you're not worried about pixelation or artifacts or anything. You are just in a museum. One of Tao of the Sun recently got a 4K VR headset, and he came in the museum, and when I asked him, how is it, what do you think, being in a 4K headset for the first time? And he said, I'm just there. So, and then, but at the same time, it looks really good. I also want it to be very good on the performance. So one of the lowest end graphics cards you can use on a PC is the GTX 1060 or 1650 SC in VR, 36 frames, and then the Quest 2 will kind of up it to 72 automatically. And I wanted it to be less than 100 megabyte download until I realized that wasn't possible. So then I'm like, okay, well let's at least make it less than 150. That wasn't possible, so less than 200. It turns out I could not do any of those, and it ended up being 387. But from what I wanted, I got these solutions. We can bake all the lighting, remove the specular, the art looks nice, the lighting looks good and clear, and it runs very, very fast. For optimizations to improve memory, I was going to channel pack a lot of art into smaller, into the red, green, and blue channels on different textures. And I'm also going to use vertex color to define things in the materials. And I made hundreds of custom shaders in order to do all this and get it done. If I hadn't done that, the museum would have been worse quality and double the file size. And along with the verisimilitude, I didn't want any artifacts. Well, that was my goal. As little artifacts as possible. So I relied on bicubic filtering and detail texturing to take care of that. So here's an example of bicubic filtering in action. On the very left, you see Doom graphics, which, depending on how old you are, you might consider this to be how video games started. Of course, many of us look at that and they're like, well, that's pixel art. But actually, some 3D engines can only show and fill an entire square with the color of the pixel before it jumps to the next color on the next pixel. This produces a lot of heavy aliasing, and it just does not look good. You come up to the art, and all you see are just a bunch of pixels. And then since the Nintendo 64, which really popularized this, it's been earlier, but there was something called bilinear. So if you look at the dots, the center color of all those squares are in the exact center of every dot in this image. And then it just blends linearly from one color to the next. This looks fine from a distance, but when you get up close, it gives you that nasty CG artifact looking thing. And you have these weird triangles and kite patterns all over the place. You look at it and you just think this is a video game. And then on the very right, we have bicubic filtering. Everything just looks smooth. A square pixel will resolve to a perfectly round form. And you will never be able to tell how many pixels are in bicubic filtered image. The darkest point, if you notice, on the bicubic filtering is in between the pixel centers. So you're not even able to tell, it just appears a little bit smoother when it's in. So here's what bilinear looks like on the art. And you can tell there's some pixelation on a lot of the details, especially around the scales, around the eyes. And then switching to bicubic, it looks nice and smooth. You can't tell that there are any issues with this image. So this is bilinear, bicubic, and all the art in the museum uses bicubic unless it specifically needs to be rendered with pixels. Something else I did that most other users in VRChat don't do is I encoded all the art at a very high quality BC7. By default, all textures come in Unity DXT1, and every 4x4 block of pixels, which is 16 pixels total, can only reference 2 colors. And then different blends halfway and 2/3 of the way and 1/3 of the way between those 2 colors. That's how you get colors existing in place, being thrown in places they really shouldn't. It makes all the textures look even worse when you add bilinear on top of that, and you just get nothing but artifacts. BC7 looks very close to the uncompressed image. There's a few artifacts, but it looks very clean, and it also allows for far more colors. That's another thing. DXT1 only allows 32,000 colors. 5 bits red, 6 bits green, 5 bits blue. So 32 colors of red, 64 shades of green, and 32 blue. And the reason there's more in green is because our eyes are more sensitive to green. BC7, though, doesn't have that limitation. It can reference all 16.7 million colors in a 24-bit system, but only with 8 bits per pixel. Most of the art in the museum is run at that level. This is a guide that I used in order to optimize the texture formats. I have all the resolutions up at the top as powers of 2, along with their bitmaps and the total size in megabytes for what these textures take, as well as the relative quality in all the different channels. All the art in the museum, there's multiple different textures, and they're running the full gamut of many of these different texture file sizes in order to produce different effects, including uncompressed sometimes. So here's an example of how you use vertex colors to improve the number of textures being used. All of these pieces, all these sketchbook pieces, there's 4 of them. The 1, 2 that you can see, and then 3, 4 on the other side, all using the same texture, and all those images are stacked on top of each other. It's also using the same material. This is not an Atlas texture. I did not make a big texture sheet with a bunch of stuff on it and say, okay, we're going to use this corner, we're going to use that corner, we're going to use that corner, we're going to use that corner. That would require double the, quadruple actually, the file size. I cut it down to a quarter and stacked everything on top of each other. And then I used vertex colors to say, show me only the red channel here, only the green one here, only the blue one here, only the alpha channel here. So in a very, very small space, I'm getting something that, I'm getting a lot of images that actually look higher quality than most textures in Unity. Because most people just don't know how to do this. Now, one of the greatest effects in the museum, and this is pretty much everyone that I ask, what's your favorite room in the museum?
The dark room.
What's your favorite room? There's wonderful Egyptian art. There's wonderful art by Ferret Studios of abstract works. There's all these amazing, there's an entire piece of 50 otters having a block party together. There's so much wonderful things in the museum, and everyone always has the same answer. Oh, I really like the dark room. Oh, the dark room is so cool. Oh, it's so shiny. So, you know, a lot of furries have ADD, and that's the room for them. It's very shiny, it's very lovely, it's very colorful, and you know, it's not all highbrow. It's a fun room to be in. You can throw little glow sticks, little very big glow sticks at each other, and your avatar will reflect in the mirror as well. That mirror is also the most optimized mirror in VR chat. And that room is the easiest room to render. I've had people tell me, well, you should have an option to turn off the mirror. And I said, why? Well, it'll improve the performance. But this room performed better than all the other ones. So, in order to achieve this effect, there were really 10, 12, 15 different things stacked on top of each other. I had something I called the perfect tile system, which I made in Unreal Engine, where I can specify a different direction movement for each tile using a single texture, just pixel by pixel. And the tiles actually tilt physically in that direction. So if you have a VR headset, you can get down to the floor and see the tiles all tilting like they should, and it shimmers. Then I used a Cinemirror, which is a prefab that feeds the reflection into Amplify. So I can only reflect players and pickups, not having to reflect everything in the museum. This greatly reduces the cost, and I don't even need to reflect the room. I can just use the reflection probe already provided and get really nice high-quality reflections already baked in, not needing to be run. And then, of course, I manually controlled the appearance in order to give it that look that makes it look like a nice shining floor. Everything doing this method has to be manual. And it was really a lot to try and get this to work. It doesn't look like much from the shader nodes, but every single one of these was kind of a pain to figure out what was the right way in the right order to put all this code in. This is the area that just handles the parallax tilting. All it does is just take the tile and tilt it in that direction. It doesn't even control the normals. It only tilts the tile in 3D, but you only really appreciate that effect in VR. This is what actually controls the normals then, so that the tiles are physically taking a reflection, and it looks like a really nice sparkling floor when you enter. And then this is the Cinemirror, and the blending for the PBR, manually controlling things. And if all that confuses you, I don't blame you. It confused me too. But yeah, everyone's favorite shader was that in the museum. And if you go in VR, I really hope it becomes your favorite room too. I also hope that you see the other art and appreciate the art for what it is, because there is more art than just a shiny room. Please like another room besides a shiny room. Okay, so this is the piece that I was talking about, where each dot is less than a pixel. And this is how I did it. I don't think anyone really cares, but it's basically bicubic. I'm kind of sharpening the contrast in order to get a clean line. It's not vector. It's actually a pixel. And I'm just, you know, processing the pixels really well. That's how bicubic is done. This is how I do the channel path. So I'm only using one channel on texture. Here's the F-width thing, so that if you have a higher resolution headset, it's sharper and it doesn't completely erase the image, because when you step back, it tends to go towards a lighter color, and then the mask kind of cuts out and it stops working. This fixes that. And something that absolutely no one here cares about, you can't emulate bicubic on graphics cards because of it's not a function in assembly languages on graphics cards except for Vulkan. So there is an 8% performance hit on an RTX 2060 to have bicubic emulated using 4 texture samplers. And then I'm using other methods to try and reduce texture samplers all over. So yeah, don't use it everywhere, but when you do use it, it looks amazing. And now we get to the controversies. A lot of people were surprised to learn that there were any controversies making a museum with wonderful furry art in the art chat. But there were a ton of controversies that I had to personally deal with and put up with. There was a subculture exhibit. I had people who didn't like that Paco was there, and artists actually left the museum because their works were next to Paco's. I tried to get furries in STEM off the ground, and not a single furry in STEM wanted to have their name and their research along with their furry avatar. Not a single one. Including a guy who ran his own company, his own biomedical tech company. He's the CEO. I don't think anyone can replace him. I don't think anyone's higher than him. But he still didn't feel comfortable having his name next to his work. So, unfortunately, one big omission for the museum is furries in STEM. Furs of Color, similar situation. I initially wanted to have a fursuit versus furry. I wanted to show people's personas and then their real life selves. I realized I made the whole museum and I didn't have any African American furries represented. It was not by design or intention, it just happened that way. I actually spoke with some people and they said, oh, well, Hispanics and South Americans and Native Americans also are part of Furs of Color. Well, they have the biggest displays. Panda Paco is Mexican. And Kiaun has an entire wall in the sci-fi section. He's from Chile. And then Dan Shuhai is half Vietnamese, born in, oh God, I might screw this up, the Philippines. And he has 100 pieces in there, all rotating around the room. So all of the biggest displays, all of the floor space that I could have used for other artists, they couldn't take. There was so much issues trying to get Furs of Color off the ground. I ended up spending a month just trying to reach out to people, trying to get people connected, just trying to get that off the ground, and it didn't work. A lot of people complain about the large download size. It's a 387 megabyte world if you go in now. I'm sorry. If I lower the resolution of the texture any more than it is right now, lines start disappearing. We have wonderful detail in scales on scaling. That all goes away, and now it's just a muddled little mess. I needed to have good resolution. I needed to have good quality art, and I didn't want to sacrifice that. And if I did want to make this run on Quest, there's a million things I'd have to change and remove in order to get it to run. It needs to be lower than 100 megabytes. I'd have to remove all the art, which I can't do. It's a museum. So it's not compatible with Quest. I excluded videos because of the bitrate issues, and I also didn't know how to make it nice so that the music in the world was already coming in through videos, and I didn't know how to make that work between multiple pieces. So the public release was postponed in order to get Furries in Color, or the Furs of Color and the history of the fandom. But the history of the fandom ended up being the most popular display, and I'm really glad that we were able to get that in. And I also got another people really railing on me for having a high quality marijuana by default. In more detail, I'll talk about the subculture exhibit. So I had a friend who inspired me to help make the museum. And he said to me one day, you keep talking about making this furry museum. Why don't you just do it? And that's what spawned that. I said, you know what, you're right. I'll go ahead and make a museum in VR chat. But then, and he was in there, even when there was no art and it was just empty walls. Then I got to the subculture exhibit and he absolutely loathed it. There was a piece in there by an ABDL artist, and he called that entire community pedos. He called my friends pedos. He said that in front of the guy who actually, I spoke with him and I said, let's try to get something in here. And then we went back and forth on what would be a good piece to show. And he was there trying to witness it for the very first time, while my friend is sitting there calling him a pedo, not realizing that he's doing that. The identity is blurred for the safety of the individual, but it caused a lot of issues. I was scared. He went up and took pictures of it, and I knew he was going to take those pictures not to enjoy for himself, but to use as evidence against me. And he also took a picture of the panel before he read it, and wasn't interested in reading it at all. So I was scared that he was going to have VR chat take it down or report me. And I didn't want to risk all of the other artists in the museum just to have these few pieces up. And I said, in those people, congratulations, you've won. You've managed to censor art and make even the artists feel uncomfortable displaying their work in this museum. One of the artists found out about everything and then declined to even have any representation in the museum whatsoever. Because the piece that he made, he said it was innocent, and I agreed with him, it is innocent, and it would have been a very nice display to have it in there. He didn't want anything to do with the museum, because he felt I was making him look bad. It was only really the voice of one person, one angry person who stopped this. But I removed everything. They gave me such grief, gave other artists such grief, and can't be mature enough to accept the art of furry subcultures in a small portion of the museum dedicated to furry art. Because of the ludicrous response by just one or two people won't grow up and nothing will ever improve. You'll get your cereal aisle, and people who are marginalized will stay that way. Their voices have been forced shut. I'm done with this. And I removed all the art from the museum. I replaced it with a plaque about the story of how I tried to get that art in there, but it had to be censored because I was scared that the world would be taken down. There was a developer in VR chat though. I'll keep his name secret, but he did see the world and I told him about it and I said, what can I do? I don't think it's that bad. I want to show people the art. How can I do it? And he recommended go to VR Chat's TOS. You can do a ban appeal and submit, basically ban myself, like moderate myself, and let them know. And if they say yes, then I can follow them. 3 days later, I heard back. Hello. Any explicit mention of kinks and fetishes, etc. is against the TOS. However, the art you've submitted as examples are not. The main difference between the two is there is no mistaking what someone means by saying fetish or kink. Whereas art, barring overt / explicit examples, it's largely open to interpretation. We'd ask that the plaques not mention sexual topics directly by name, but otherwise see little issue with this as presented. Bear in mind we're only speaking of the submitted examples. Anything else not shown here will be subject to the same standards. If you have any further inquiries, please let us know by responding to this ticket. Thank you for writing in. The VR Chat Trust and Safety Team. So it came back. I wanted to present this world with the new art at the community meetup, which is a group of all of the most popular, some of the most famous VR chat developers and world creators, including people who make the tools that we use in order to make worlds for you. I received the email at 9:32 p.m. on Friday, and then the event happened at 4 o'clock on Sunday. I had less than 2 days to put that entire display back, write a new plaque, and then feature it in the community meetup. And I thought it would be really nice to give people that experience. But the very first image of the museum posted online was this. This is one of the most popular world creators in VR chat, Digital Frog. And this picture was circulated more than 30,000 times on Twitter. And it is a picture of the subculture exhibit. And that's fine as long as it's not misrepresenting the museum. But there were no other images, there was no other context given. It was just this. So then people started pouring in their comments. I hate this. No offense to my kinkier friends, but like, yeah. I don't know if you heard, but the guy showing it off was like, it's only sexual if you think of it being sexual. LMAO. That part of the world was so awkward to see at the meetup, and they even kept trying to stop people from censoring it for the stream. People had been putting Tetris pieces from the other room and blocking the art so that it can't be seen. And other people were throwing portals and stuff so no one can see it. That was disrespectful, and I tried to tell people, please respect the art. And then I made some responses. No sex is depicted anywhere in the museum. Censoring the art for everyone in the museum was not good faith behavior. If there was a streaming service that prohibits this content, it would be easy to skip this exhibit and show everything else. But it was not in violation of VR chat nor Twitch. And someone else, I can't really read what it says down here, but I know I mentioned something about the content is no worse than what you see in children's shows. The way I lit it and the way I presented it makes people feel uncomfortable. But there was nothing errant about that. And after all those comments, there was a voice that was drowned out. And that was the guy who actually made the original post, Digital Frog. He said, I actually appreciated the world a lot. VRC needs more art galleries. And now there are. Although I found the juxtaposition of my avatar in front of that specific art as comical, I would say the sexuality of the first image is heavily implied. But I agree, it isn't more than PG-13. And I told him, I'm glad you had a fun experience. I just hope people don't get the wrong idea about this museum's content. This exhibit is limited to only 3 pieces out of more than 260 in the entire museum. At the time, there was so much art in the museum, including upstairs, but no one really got that far. A lot of people were so uncomfortable with it, they were making so many comments, and in future showings, people straight up didn't even come in to see the museum. They stayed out front, and they were opposed. I was also treated a little bit differently in the group after that. One of the people who actually helped me make the museum, after that, I don't know if that's the case, but he no longer wears his furry avatar in the community meetup. And that was in the museum, in MoMA, in a public museum that kids can go to. Really, it was art in its own right. I really liked that experience, seeing all this wonderful art. And the things that I remember the most wasn't all the amazing Picasso pieces that I saw, or all the amazing moving mobiles that I saw, it was the shock art. I remembered that. And I wanted to give people the same experience that I got going to MoMA. And then seeing something shocking that they've never seen before, that they would usually go online, see it, and then they turn away immediately. Well, I put art in there that makes you want to see it more. You look at it, you're wondering what's happening. You're seeing a My Little Pony getting hypnotized, and you're seeing all these different words on the screen. Good girl, good girls obey. And then it begs the question, because you can't really tell with the expression, is she really enjoying it? It is, and I had several people give me the comment that this is really well done. If you were going to show it at all, this is how you should do it. And this is how it should be displayed. So here it is, the entire infamous subculture exhibit in the museum. And I couldn't say this in VR chat, but starting on the right, you will enter, turn around, and be met face to face with inflation, followed by ABDL, tickling, hypno, and vor. And all of those were actually described before I had to remove it for VR chat's terms of service. But that display is a fascinating experience for people to have in the museum and stumble upon. The same way they would stumble upon this art in real life. And I do hope that people are a little bit more mature about it when they do see it in the museum. Guys, I had to see a lot of inflation. And most of it is bad. Most of it is really bad. It's a kid in MS Paint who drew a circle and then their persona's head, and that's it. I had to see hundreds of them. I had to see thousands of them. Like Hypno, it's their icon, but with Hypno eyes. So that's Hypno now. I actually had to dig in quite a bit in order to find some of the pieces here. The middle one doesn't even exist if you search for it. Alphonse Lavallee, the only reason I know that piece is there because I followed him when I was a little youngin', and I was kind of, into pause myself. And he had this on his DeviantArt page, which he had stopped posting for 10 years. If you try to search for him now, because he hasn't used the site in 10 years, nothing shows up. Even if you get his name exactly right. And even if you get the name of his piece exactly right. I had to look through and jump through so many hoops in order to find that piece. And I looked through his entire gallery and selected that as one of the pieces for the museum. Some people were very angry and opposed. But for every person who was angry, there were many, many more who were joyful and enlightened, and they loved the project. And those are the voices that truly matter. My friends, people in the meetup, who showed me their favorite games and loved that I had an entire section of games that they played. I had people in Master Chief outfits and people in furry outfits all saying the same thing. Oh, I loved playing that game when I was young. I had people who saw Paco's exhibit who weren't furries and said, why can't more furry art be like this? This looks great. I had Shymax in there. I had so many people show up. I had people who I had Silas show up and then make this little display in further confusion where Keish took a picture of Tab, and they were my friends in VR and they saw this in real life, wondering why the heck it's doing across the country. And then they came in VR so I could take a picture of them in front of the picture that they took. And then I want to see maybe I can put this picture in the picture, then we can take another picture of them in the picture that they took, and then we can have Silas in there in the pictures that he printed in the pictures that they took, in front of the picture that they took. So many friends had helped me with the project, including Myro. I really owe a lot to him. He helped me get set up a bakery and amplify and get all the tools that I needed to get running off the ground. He got the history exhibit working, and I made this display as a little kind of tribute to him. And that's my new avatar, my persona, Tyler the Gator. Really excited to have that there. The show, the museum had attracted a lot of amazing guests. The Jim Ward being accepted into the museum was something I never even thought could happen. Someone who's an official Disney fine artist, someone who's a Grammy award-winning artist. There aren't that many of those, by the way, in the world. accepted into the Virtual Furry Museum. And then in the top right corner, if you don't know who that is, that reindeer is Abisco. He programmed weight painting in Blender, including the vertex color painting tools that I used to make the museum. And I walked through the museum and showed him how I used his tools, and he was shocked and impressed. He never thought that anyone would ever use the tools he made in that way. Leon Foxy did a stream, and I also had a stream with the Fun Day Pop-Up Show with Yappy, Silas, and the people who used to run this convention. And Fuma was there as well.
Woo, Fuma! You're adorable.
You're more than adorable. The museum attracted a lot of wonderful guests. I have a sign outside now for all the wonderful guests that have been hosted, including very popular creators in VR. It's a world that people use to show furry representation, people who don't otherwise know. I've heard comments, I believe, from someone over here in the front row, oh, I wish this was available when I was trying to explain to my family what furries are and what we do. So the number of good comments far outweigh the lousy ones. And it is my hope that the Puritans of the world, the people who seek to create divisions and wreak havoc in our community, I really hope that those people take a step back and look at the museum and the art for what it is. It's an expression of ourselves, our identity. It's who we are as people, as furries. And that art, I don't think, is something that we should censor. I think it's something we should celebrate. I think it's something that everyone should see and hopefully try to understand. I just updated this a few days ago. The numbers keep changing. But the world has been visited almost 10,000 times, not 9,615 visits. It's been favorited almost 800 times, 796. That number keeps going up. And the reports, what's really funny, they get a lot of reports. And every single one of them, VR chat declines. The number goes down, and then it gets reported again. The number goes down, it gets reported again. Every time I look at it, it hovers between 9 and 10 and 11. Because I went first to VR chat, and I asked them, can I put this here? And they said yes. So the museum is not going anywhere. And something else I don't have up there that I wanted to mention. There's been a lot of misconceptions about the start of the fandom. A lot of misconceptions that unfortunately had gone on for many decades. And many people were left unaware who started the fandom, how it started, and how the early conventions were ran. Because the voices were not the most accurate or reliable sources. And those voices are still present today, wreaking havoc. But the museum stands as a testament, calling back to the early creators, the people who dedicated their lives and their time to putting conventions together so that we can be here today, face to face. And if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here. So I think it's very appropriate that you show, Silas, everyone, your little light up tag right there. I don't know if you guys can read that. So you're welcome. I originally had a million slides about how to make a good world, but since none of you are good world creators, I'm sorry, that came out wrong. None of you are good world creators yet.
He charges hourly.
I just decided to end with some wisdom. The alternative to good design is bad design. There's no such thing as no design. That's from Adam Judge, the author of the Little Black Book of Design. This is kind of an interesting critique from Shigeru Miyamoto. We want people to enjoy the game, but how on earth are they going to enjoy what you've done here? This is something I wish I could tell a lot of people in VR chat. An email to Eiji Aonuma during the development of Twilight Princess. And he said in a Iwata Asked interview, he always keeps that in mind now whenever making any game, anything. He's always thinking about that quote. And then the very last one, regarding history. If you don't know history, then you don't know anything. You are a leaf that doesn't know it is part of a tree. I think those are some beautiful words to live by Michael Crichton, author of Jurassic Park and Westworld. And for those of you who might not be VR chat creators, but just creators in general, artists in the room, and people who do wonderful fan things, do what you can with what you have, where you are. Wonderful quote by Teddy Roosevelt. Thank you so much for coming. We will now open the floor up for questions. Yes?
How did you design the maze that I always get lost in?
The maze so you don't get lost in?
That I always get lost in.
Oh, you always
Yeah,
do.
whenever I'm drunk, always.
Oh my lord. Well, so I actually, there's a little generator you can use to get a maze and go to an SVG, and then I just take that in Blender and do an extrusion.
Okay.
Does that make any sense? Well, picture like I made a little flat design, and now I'm taking that flat design and raising it so a line becomes a wall.
Yeah.
And then I just, yeah.
This is why I always use fly.
Yeah.
By the way, I am not the only one who's accepting questions. There's VR questions, there's otter questions with Fuma, world creation questions, anything about the museum with me, and history with Silas. So you can ask any of us questions. Please let us know. Yes.
Are you going to let us stand inside the trash cans again?
Okay, there's something you guys need to okay. When I first made the trash cans, they had collision. I only put them there to make the world seem, more verisimilitude. Please leave your trash outside. When you come into the museum, please respect it. And everyone wanted to go in the trash. Every single time I make a new update, I can't go in the trash. Why do you want to?
Give the people what they want.
Oh my god. And then so then I got fed up with it because over and over again people were saying they wanted, so I just removed the collision. It's the most janky thing ever, but then I put a sign. And I said, you are not trash. You are beautiful. So anyone who takes a picture in front of the trash can now, well sure, they can have their fun, but they gotta take a picture of that sign too.
Actually, I hold my hand over it.
And then the gentleman in the back.
Yes. So I'm curious how you run projects. I know that some people have many irons in the fire and stuff like that, many worlds that they're working on. Do you do just focus on one world? And this could go for Fuma as well, but do you focus on one world, or do you have like many worlds you have in your mind and then you kind of touch on each one?
So the interesting thing is with the museum, there's so many different parts of it and elements of it. I really want to focus on the museum. And then I'll just have a couple little other projects if the museum starts to really annoy me and I'm struggling with it. So I can just get my mind somewhere else and come back to it when I'm fresh. But for the most part, it's one at a time. I do have ideas though for other museums. There is a new one that I'm working on right now, the Future Furry Museum, which will be released next year. And I also have plans for more, but we'll see. So yeah, the gentleman in the back.
In relation to your controversies and some of the struggles,
You're gonna have to project.
in relation to some of the controversies you've dealt with, as well as some of might help with that?
Well, I mean, I do. I have the plaque over there that says, you know, this is the subculture exhibit. Every single thing has a plaque describing it, and it's trying to give people a little bit of context about the history and what styles are used and present, and the artists themselves. That didn't matter to people, but no one reads these things. They have to come in the museum and love the museum before they go and read a few plaques. And then there are a few people who come in and they're reading all the updates that have happened from like months ago, and it's been like 20 minutes and they haven't seen a single piece of art yet.
Reading the updates.
Just reading the updates. So, like, the controversy really wouldn't mean, like, all of it is addressed in the plaques, too. Like, Pablo Panda, for instance, made 3,000 pieces of safer work for art. He does not like doing NSFW. He hasn't for a very long time. He only made a few pieces a long, long time ago, and there are people who still, to this day, try to drag him in through the mud for a few pieces. And to me, it makes no sense, because why is some NSFW stuff okay and others is not? It doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, if people read the plaques, and they would know he is a very famous creator. He is only safe for work. They would know he's made tons of good stuff, and he supports charities and conventions all around the world. But you know, the Puritans don't care, and a lot of people who are upset don't care. Yes.
Are there any plans to allocate future resources towards preservation?
Preservation?
Yes.
As far as
Like preservation of old artists, art, stuff that's starting to fade away.
there's a lot of so one good example of that is Shout Milo, who posted all his stuff on Twitter, and he hasn't used DeviantArt since 2012. And Twitter's deleting everything prior to 2013 and 2014 now. So a lot of that art might be lost to time. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to go and download every single thing someone's ever made. That is something I would recommend that artists do if they're getting money.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt. Borrowing this wireless.
All right. So yeah, no. Everything in the museum I have copies of. So if it's chosen and selected for the museum, I have the original files. I also have the edited file that I use to clean up the JPEG artifacts, and I will scour and find pieces that are actually higher resolution than what they post on most media. I'll even ask the artist sometimes for the highest resolution they can get me, in certain cases where it would limit to like 800 by 600 or something. So there is a decent amount of work going into preservation of the stuff that's in the museum, but as far as their entire gallery, no. Yes, Steve?
Two things. As far as preserving stuff, at least online, some things you could go to archive.gov or the Wayback Machine, which takes snapshots of websites as time goes on, and you can go back and look at stuff depending on what it is. But my question for you, you were mentioning the Future Museum, which we discussed at length when I visited you a while back. Are you going to try to do all the things that we talked about, that you had told me you were going to try and do with that?
What did I tell you I was going to try and do?
We were talking roller coasters and stuff like that. I don't
No.
really remember, but
No, I have ambitions. I am one person. Sometimes the ambition is a little bit too big for one person to do. And then I try to find people who can help me, if the ambition is bigger than 2 people, it's bigger than 3 people, it's probably going to be bigger than a team of 100 AAA artists working non-stop for 6 months. In that situation, I will not do it. I will say sayonara and replace it with something that's a little easier to do. So one of the examples, something I really wanted to do have a universe area, kind of like a planetarium, but you can actually pick different furry universes and see all the different planets and all the different cultures and species and things. And it was going to be filmed almost like Planet Earth, but with someone, with someone who has a narration voice very similar to David Attenborough, but in VR. So you're looking all around you and you're seeing the Big Bang. You're seeing the rock shatter into the earth and then creating the moon. You're seeing the extinction of species and the creation of animals in VR with amazing music and sound effects. I can't do that. I mean, I can, given enough time, but I kind of would like to enjoy life.
Great museum, first great museum.
Someone else is trying to do it. There's a lot of things so one of the big things I really wanted to do was the CFO actually had tapes that they would show to people at the convention, and Silas has all those tapes. And he has machines that can display and record all those tapes digitally, and it is possible to get that in the museum. But I had to figure out like 20 different technical difficulties and hoops to jump through in order to get it to work and function properly in the museum. This stuff is not. There's a lot that I want to do that I just straight up don't have the time, and even though I can do it, it just takes way too much time. 6 months, more than full-time effort to get to a box with 5 rooms, really well lit, and like dozens and dozens and dozens of artists contacted. Like for every artist that is in the museum, I had to contact several more who didn't respond or didn't say anything. Some people responded 6 weeks later. Some people led me on, and then led me on. Then it turned out they didn't do it. It's a big hassle to put everything together. You can have one mic. Okay. Yeah. All right. I will yell as loudly as I possibly can.
I would bring you a wire before I ever did that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You just
All right.
say perfect.
We have, you're welcome. Okay, any questions for Fuma or Mark, Silas, Sable? I feel like we need a question for one of them. Do you have a question for? You have a question? Eat the microphone.
I have a question for everyone. Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yes.
So, who is attending a convention for the first time in the last 4 years? Who's not attended before in the last 4 years? Who's like new to the whole convention scene? You've all attended conventions since 2018 or so? Got a couple hands here. A lot of y'all have attended for many years in the past. That's good. For many people, like me, I've only been attending conventions for about 2 years or so. All this is new to me. Seeing a wonderful hotel, seeing everything working like clockwork, seeing marvelous suits and events being managed. It wasn't always like this. And I think it's important to see just how the history of conventions has gone, because it's a history of furry fandom as a total. I'm learning about all of this. I'm glad there's a museum out there to show how it began. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And a lot of it's being lost in time. A lot of it's being lost to TikTok.
You got a mic back.
You got it.
Hello?
Got her now.
You really need to eat it.
Check. So it's lost to modern media, modern social media. A lot of people new to the fandom like me don't have a connection to the old media. It's important to have museums like this one, important to have old archives so it's not lost. So people don't know a lot of the voices who are no longer here. A lot of the media that's no longer present. I mean, who reads newsgroups anymore? Even Twitter now is almost dead. So it's important to preserve, important to keep that message going. inspired. You've done well to keep inspired and create a museum. For those who have attended it years in the past, don't lose that. Keep your old connections. Tell new people to the fandom how it used to be, so they can see how it's now, and maybe they can improve it 5 years from now too.
I absolutely agree. But thank you for Okay, we have the guy who made the fandom here. I'm surprised we don't have any questions. The next question is for Silas. The next question is for Silas. I will start yodeling until someone has a question for him.
I got a question for Silas. Through your experiences working in this museum, what was the piece you were most proud to get to showcase in the history exhibit?
The proudest thing you were to showcase in history. I guess in the museum, right?
Yeah, in specifically the context of the museum.
One of the things that surprised me to me, because Jenka Husky, my other partner, was the one who scanned all like 3,000 documents to put up on the conference archive, which he did because he got so tired of reading about how there was this great funny animal fandom, and then these two guys from California came around and sexualized everything and ruined it all. And he got so tired of that he dug through our filing cabinets and started basically scanning all this stuff, which is all pre-internet, and it shows that, a lot of the origins of the furry fandom came from underground comics. So there really wasn't a funny animal fandom to turn into anything else. But I think it was Solo who found it. It was a panel guide for Conference Zero. Basically, it was basically 2 sheets of Xerox paper. And on the back of it was the panels we were having in our tiny little first convention. And when you read it, you see all the same topics that 30 years later are still being discussed at furry conventions, including things like, gender and things about art. Yeah, and species meets. We were doing the species meets at the very first furry convention. And about the only thing on there, which we don't see much anymore, was there was a workshop on body paint. Because back in the beginning, besides a few fursuits, we had a lot of people who were doing body paint to turn themselves furry. You don't see that much anymore. Occasionally you do, but it's not really common. But that surprised me because I didn't even remember a lot of those panels from doing 11 years of conventions, that way back in 1989, the fandom was still pretty much interested in than it is now. Another thing that's kind of cool is we have a map. How many people know what mucks are? Well, there's a muck called Furry Muck, which was the first exclusively furry muck. What a muck is it's a text-based role-playing game where you make a character and you make the world is descriptions that you go through. It's like an old text adventure game, except that there's no dungeon, there's no points to make, you don't get swords and stuff. It's just a social environment.
It's like VR chat but with text.
It's all text.
You're in a room and you text.
The people who actually created it made the core, described the core so that people who first logged on would have some place to explore. And one of the people who did both the descriptions was also an artist, and he made a 2-page map of Furry Muck, an actual map of it with all the places listed that exist. And I think they're all still there because Furry Muck is still up and running. And that was kind of neat to have.
Speaking of Furry Muck, which I have seen,
Not that I know of. However,
Don't point at me.
Peer pressure.
there was a lot of furry activity on Second Life. And some of the Second Life furry worlds are being built in VRChat. So at least that's happening.
So if I can say, generally speaking, that there are two different kinds of world creators. Well, there's several different kinds, but there are people who make worlds and then show it off, and then make another world and show it off, make another world, show it off. And I will just pour over these tiny little details that no one would ever notice. And spend hours upon hours upon hours fixing things, making sure that things work, and bring a level of quality that most people have not seen. And even to the point where someone, who's a community manager, said, "Why are you doing this? We can't even see the detail that you put in here. Computers aren't there yet." But they will be. Also, with regards to the history stuff, there's so much good stuff in there. The very first issue of Browser, some early APA fanzines of Rudy, there's less than 60 copies of those in the world. And they were all printed on very poor copy paper, Xeroxed in. So most of them, I imagine, would have been lost to time, or destroyed, or it's possible that they would fade. If you rub it, it would rub off. And we're very lucky to be able to show those things at all. But for many people, the fandom didn't start until the 80s. It started a lot sooner. Okay. Let's keep doing questions until someone says we need to get out of here. More questions. All the way in the back. You are going to have to project.
Yeah, I have a question. My panel starts in half an hour, so I'm going to
He's the one that's taking us out.
kicking you out.
He's got a panel that starts in 30 minutes. So.
Okay, your panel starts in 30 minutes?
in 30 minutes.
70 minutes.
At
3-0. All right. We will make sure to be out of here. The good news is everything is plugged in, so all you have to do is just boop, and you're done. So yes.
I have one more question for both Sai and Fuma. Obviously, we have, Sai the Sable, Fuma the Otter. Which is the superior mustelid?
Six feet tall, fluffy otter. How much do you weigh? Is it all muscle or is it just fur? Have you guys seen what animals look like without fur? It's a twig.
There's the naked otter VRChat avatar.
You're 6 feet tall, you weigh 20 pounds. It's all in the rudder. Over here, this side of, wait. Oh, God.
When Ken Sample started drawing himself as a cougar guy, originally he would just draw himself in his art, responding to pictures he would draw of incredibly buxom feline girls. And then all of a sudden, the little Ken Sample caricature turned into this little cougar guy that looked like Ken Sample. Don't know why he suddenly did that, but we noticed it and said, "Oh, that's Ken Cougar." And he said, "No, that's not. It looks just like you. He wears the same clothes. He has the same haircut. He has the same glasses. It's you." So all of us in our house, the Prancing Skilter, said, "We want to have a furry that's us too." Both Rodney and I discovered the weasel family from falling in love with otters. So, me with the Disney movie Beaver Valley, they kept showing, actually I kept showing because I was the nerd projectionist in grade school who ran the projector. And I always liked the otters better than the beavers because there's all these animals that are having fun on purpose. You don't think wild animals do that kind of thing. Same thing happened with Rodney. So we really love otters, but both of us thought that they were above us. They were just too good for us. So I picked a pine marten, which is the same thing as a sable, just a different country. And he picked a mink, which he said was an otter with attitude. So I guess otters are superior. They were so superior we wouldn't even pick them for summer.
All right. I think we'll take one more question, and then we will head out and let the new people set up. Yes.
Tatum exhibit in next museum when? Tatum exhibit in next museum when?
There actually is a Tatum coming into the new museum.
Oh, good. You better.
Can he do the mashed potato?
Of pixels versus hardware and robots.
So furries really do ruin everything, is what we're getting down to.
And I think it's interesting, there's so many furry species being invented that exist really now only in VR only, like Tatums, like Rexiums, different interpretations of mixed species that you don't see in classic furry media. And there's rumors of the fursuits now. So we've gone from real media to representing VR, and now have VR actually the creation zone for new furry concepts to be introduced in real life. So I think it's a next now, especially like the Tatum and Rexes.
But obviously the Tatums are the best.
Thank you all for coming. It was a great presentation. Back there, we have tons of cookies, chocolate, refreshments, and the program. Please take them. I do not want to take them home.
Woo!